Okay, thank you. I'm Chairman White, and I'm calling to order the Audit Committee for May 11th, 2022 at 10 a.m. with a public meeting session. I'd like to take roll call, please. So, Mr. Tabor.
I'm here.
Ms. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Lynch.
Here.
And I know that Hawk Furman is, his wife has COVID, so he's absent. And Suzanne Woodland,
Here.
and I am also here. But my pen isn't working. And it's not working again. And we don't have anyone on Zoom.
We have one person.
One person? Do we know who's there?
We can ask the person to unmute.
Is it Lisa?
Liza,
Liza, rather? Yeah, okay.
do you want me to ask?
Hi, Liza.
Hi.
Good morning. So I'd like to go to the third item on the agenda, please. The approval of the public session minutes for February 8th and 15th. Can I get a motion, please, to approve?
So
Make a
moved.
motion to approve those minutes.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you. So I'd like to get an update, please, from Attorney Woodland on the status of the contract negotiations for the 2022 auditor.
Sure. The City of Portsmouth has entered into a one-year agreement with Melanson for purposes of both the non-attest and the audit services.
And may I ask the date of the contract?
I believe it is dated last Friday, May 5th?
May 5th. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before we go to,
Chairman White, one question. So did the final cost on the non-attest services come down?
So the final contract amount, and I apologize for not bringing it with me, was, I want to say it was 77,000? No, I don't remember. I don't have the contract in front of me, but if you give me a minute, I can pull it up. But it was the $5,000 for the non-attest services, basically, as, yeah.
any other questions? So what I'd like to do is to just go through a public statement. And in essence, this meeting concludes a 12-month, I wrote down in my notes, odyssey of a 12-month effort to bring the City of Portsmouth into alignment with its city charter, Section 7.4. This committee's work started in May of 2021 as the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Audit Committee, and truly, thanks to the heroic efforts of its former chair, Petra Huda, and several city councilors last year, Ordinance 1.414 was passed, establishing the new Audit Committee in September of 2021. The new Audit Committee's work started in earnest in early December 2021. The new committee's charter was written and adopted, something that we would recommend for many new committees in the city. I think it's a very helpful exercise. But importantly, the audit committee spent the first 2 weeks of December drafting its request for proposal. Its RFP accomplished several goals, soliciting separate bids for non-attest and audit services, requesting that proposers submit separate bid amounts to promote competition, and establishing the audit committee as the supervisory body for managing both the non-attest and audit work. While these attributes may have been a bridge too far for city management, they are essential if the audit of the city's financial statements are to be truly independent as required by the city charter. At the last minute, at the December 15 Audit Committee meeting, the Deputy City Attorney, Suzanne Woodland, presented a redline version of the Audit Committee draft RFP. In her alternative, the city appointed Melanson to conduct the non-attest services at an unknown price and with unknown terms, created competitive bidding for only the audit work, and removed the Audit Committee from any supervisory role in the audit. Further progress toward the city audit being independent was truly lost. The Audit Committee was informed that its version was relegated to the dustbin and the city's version would stand. The city's purchasing manual states that any vendor whose work cost $10,000 or more would be subject to a competitive bid process, such as an RFP. Attorney Woodland has said that that limit now stands at over $18,000 for professional services. The Audit Committee has repeatedly asked for supporting documentation of this number so we could better understand the bidding process. To date, the Audit Committee has yet to receive this information. A February 18, 22 memo from Melanson to Attorney Woodland states that the non-attest services done on a standalone basis would cost the city $25,000. But Melanson states that if those same non-attest services were conducted as part of the audit services, the cost would remarkably fall to only $5,000. CLA had estimated to me last fall that its standalone non-attest services would be between $10,000 and $12,000. Upon reflection, I would characterize Melanson's $25,000 bid as extortionate. The city-written RFP that was issued on December 16th, following the Audit Committee meeting on the 15th, introduced significant complications to the bidding process. Gone was the chance to gather competitive bids for the non-attest services. By appointing Melanson to do the non-attest services without knowing how much Melanson would charge, Attorney Woodland exposed the city to work costing potentially more than even the $18,000 limit for professional services. It was an untenable situation because the city hadn't issued an RFP for non-attest services. It forced the city's hand, either require Melanson to lower its fee from $25,000 to $18,000, or give Melanson the entire audit and non-attest services contract. It is not a surprise how the city decided to proceed. Call the entire RFP process invalid and award Melanson the audit contract for 1 more year. The city had to create a distraction to invalidate the process. Yes, the RFP was clearly at fault, but that alone would call into question the city's interference in the RFP process on December 15. There had to be something more. Claiming that the Audit Committee had violated procedures by texting CLA was the perfect solution. That was the one process violation necessary to support the City Council's claim on March 21 that the Audit Committee was at fault and that therefore the entire search effort was problematic and invalid. First things first. I was the one to text CLA. It wasn't the committee. If you were to read my text, you would see that I asked Chris Rogers of CLA if he could present to the committee as a whole the CLA's amended proposal cost for conducting both the non-attest services and the audit. I specifically told Mr. Rogers I wanted him to respond to the committee, not to me. I asked that he be available for a conference call with the committee at 10 a.m. on February 24th. I have provided the text correspondence to the City Council, the Mayor, and City Management. Now, I would like to read to you my attorney's response to this situation, which was given to Attorney Sullivan and Attorney Woodland on April 18th. Based on my understanding, my attorney wrote, Mr. White reached out to a prospective bidder to ensure that the bidder provided a timely and thorough estimate to the City of Portsmouth by a date certain. Mr. White also informed the bidder that they would be interviewed by the Audit Committee on February 24th. This does not constitute a flaw, as was suggested in Councilor Tabor's City Council comments on March 21st. On the contrary, it enhances the likelihood that a qualified bidder provides timely and thorough information so that the city can make an informed decision. In fact, what appears to be flawed is the use of an innocuous communication regarding an information deadline as a pretext to discard the bidding process and award the contract to Melanson. It is also worth noting that during the January 25 Audit Committee meeting, Deputy City Attorney Suzanne Woodland did not prohibit Mr. White from contacting prospective bidders. She simply stated that the bidder had to come before the whole committee for an interview. This instruction was never undermined or compromised in any way. That's the end of my attorney's statement. It has been my experience as a member of the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Audit Committee and then as chair of the Audit Committee that time and again the city has worked against the Audit Committee's efforts to make the audit of the city's finances to be more independent. Attorney Woodland's role in the Audit Committee has been problematic from the beginning, since she was never appointed to serve. It should have been the city manager. If Attorney Woodland had to be on the committee, her role should have been to only advise the committee. Too often, in my opinion, she went beyond this to direct our work. There is much more here than what I can divulge due to restrictions on non-public information. The contract with Melanson was signed on May 6th, and the RFP of December 16/21 has been withdrawn. So that would suggest that any material still held in as non-public by the Audit Committee or the City Council should be made public. Until that happens, the public can only guess as to why this process went so badly off the rails. Perhaps one reason is that if flak is heaviest as one approaches the target, the Audit Committee must have gotten threateningly close. Thank you. So now I would like to open it up to public comment, please. Pete.
Peter Huda, 280 South Street. I would like to share, and I would like to put this in the public record, that I do have the audit contract that was signed on 5/6 pursuant to a right to know that I filed. I filed 2 right to knows, one on March 14th for the non-attest services. My assumption was that the non-attest services contract would have been signed per the verbal agreement that was discussed in the 12/16 meeting for 2021. My response from Attorney Woodland was that they did not have that information at that time. I also put in a right to know on the anniversary date of the approval by the Council of Melanson, and I would like to read that into the record. This is to Attorney Sullivan. A month ago today, the vote for the selection of the FY22 audit firm was taken by the City Council at the March 22 Council meeting, so the documents I am requesting below should be available to the public. Therefore, pursuant to Right to Know 91A, I am requesting public access within 5 days to the governmental records described below. This is also in accordance with RFP 2022, page 2, which states proposals submitted will be available for the public to review as may be required by New Hampshire RSA 91 after the competitive selection process is complete, which it was, concluding with a contract or a rejection of all proposals. My request was for all proposals submitted in response to RFP 2022. I also requested the audit firm that the audit committee had voted to recommend to the city council a written, executed, signed contract and all addendums and attachments, including the agreed-upon costs for the FY22 audit services. The written, executed, signed contract and all addendums and attachments, including the agreed-upon costs for the FY22 non-attest services, as my assumption was, per the RFP, that this was going to be done separate. I had no information about your non-public sessions, rightfully so. In asking for the non-attest services, as described in the posting of the RFP, I quoted the statement made in the meeting. It is anticipated in the RFP, it is anticipated that Melanson will continue to assist the city in the preparation of the financial statements and supplementary information and compliance reports and the city's award-winning GFOA report. Next thing I asked for was the additional RFP addendum and responses to that addendum, including the bid amount, by the proposers for the non-attest services, as referenced by Councilor Tabor at the 3/21/22 council meeting. As he said, the audit committee, had to go back to the proposers for an estimate to non-attest services. Per the purchasing manual, the required process, as defined on page 10, number 4, states, if there is a necessary change to specifications after the bid process has been published and mailed, bidders will be notified by issuance of an addendum. Any such addendum will be prepared by the using department and forwarded to the purchasing department to be mailed or faxed to the bidders of the original list. At this time, there is no addendum referencing RFP 2022 non-attest services on the city bid site. I also asked for a written notification of the proposer that was not selected. So to update everyone, I have received all the proposals and viewed them yesterday as requested. I have discussed with the city attorney on the getting the, just all I wanted to know was who was voted by the audit committee to be the auditor. I have received the executed contract. I will happily share this with everybody, as I guess city staff has failed to share with you guys, which is kind of amazing. I have also, this also includes the non-attest services, and in response to the supplementary information, I received the email, a copy of the emails, both to CLA, Chris Rogers, and Melanson. The one to Chris Rogers is dated February 23rd, and the one to Alina Korsak is dated the 18th. As mentioned by the chair, I find it very interesting, to say the least, that Melanson would propose a higher amount if they didn't get the services than if they did. And that's all I have to say about that. The other thing in the contract is to answer the question of Mr. Lynch. In the back of the contract, the total amount at the end was $75,000. And in reviewing the bids that came in yesterday, this was very close to the bid of CLA. Also, in reviewing the proposals yesterday, I found it very interesting. I have no idea how these proposals were evaluated, but the first thing that came to my mind when I looked at a comparison between Melanson and CLA is CLA had used all CPAs in doing all their work, and Melanson is not. And from an accounting perspective, and somebody who's gone through this previously, that's kind of a big deal. You want to get as much certified people on your job as possible. So that would probably be one of my questions. But I I would happily share the contract with the committee, whom I would have anticipated the staff would have provided today. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Peter?
Yeah, Peter Whalen. I live at 100 Gate Street. I'm here to support the committee. I was one of the counselors that voted in creating the audit committee, and we went through many iterations of it. I want to compliment Chris White and the members of the committee for stepping forward and spending a lot of time and effort to make this happen. I'm severely disappointed in the city and our counselors that sit on this committee to allow what has happened to happen. We've had the same auditor for 25 years. It needs to change. I believe a vote was taken, I'm assuming, I don't know if that's public or not, to probably award the contract to a new auditor. But as a resident of Portsmouth and one who's very concerned in transparency, what I think happened was an abomination. It was terrible. This never should have happened in the city. You know, where there's smoke, there's fire. I hope that if a new auditor comes in, he does a forensic audit going back 10 years. Let's look at the books and look at everything. I was very disappointed that counselors essentially outed what happened in non-public to discredit this committee. As a resident, I was appalled at that. And I just think that Portsmouth deserves better. City staff should not have according to the charter, city staff should be allowing the audit committee to move this forward, not city staff. This is the residents, this is part of the charter. So I'm very disappointed in what's happened here. I'm just hoping that when we do get a new auditor, they come in, they look at the books, they go back 10 years to a forensic audit to make sure everything's in order, and that's really what should happen. But as a resident, I'm very disappointed at what happened here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Chairman White, I'd like to comment if I could.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave, Portsmouth. I'd like to comment on two things. One, I did sit on the audit committee briefly, and one of the reasons we created this committee was because we were very concerned, Councilor Wood at the time and myself, with what was happening in the continuation of an audit. As someone who does multi-million-dollar budgets, I always say that it's always good to have a little turnover and have someone look at your books. During our initial meetings, I asked about the $10,000 amount in the bidding process. Publicly, in December, we voted to put an RFP out. And I thought it was going to be treated fairly. And, you know, we talked about 10,000. We talked about what the city limits were. We talked about what needed to happen. It seems to me that we not only have some personal questions about how the city reacted to this whole thing, but the question I would have for legal is, what's our legal questions? And just listening to what I heard today, I heard that there could be some question about the contracts and what part was offered over 10,000 or the new amount of 18,000. I heard from today, sitting in the Zoom world, that we have some questions from our citizens and how things were happening. I commend Mr. White for bringing forward the information. And I believe that many of us thought that the transparency for the audit of our city budget, now $133 million, to be questioned. And this was just designed so that we could have a new company look at it. And I have to ask the city, what is the problem with that? With all these annexes and all these changes in RFPs after we voted for an RFP by the city staff, it only brings forward that as a citizen, what are you trying to hide? What are we trying to cover up? What is the reason we could not have a new auditing firm? And that you spent so much time trying to make sure that wouldn't happen. As a citizen, because it hasn't been transparent for many years. Why? And I just want to leave you with that question. Why did the city work so hard to make sure that the same audit firm would continue? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, thank you all very much. So, at this stage, I'd like to go into non-public.
Chair, if I may.
Yep.
Would now be the appropriate time to perhaps address some of the comments that were made?
Sure, yeah.
Just cognizant. And because I don't want to forget it, even though I've made a note, we may want to approve, and you can do it whenever you so choose, both the public meeting minutes for both February 10th and 24th. I noticed on the agenda, and the motion was just for the 8th and the 15th. But we did have public portions of both of those meetings, and it's in your packets. I know you and I
Okay.
worked on them yesterday.
Right.
So just didn't want you to forget that at your
Thank you.
convenience. So I don't, speaking on behalf of the city manager and the finance department, I want to say that I think there is actually a huge amount of transparency in the city's budgeting process. That's one of the reasons why we have the awards that we have for our efforts to be inclusive in our process, from the development of the CIP, the capital improvement plan, to the hearings that are ongoing over the next 2 weeks and are making available both on the website, at the library, all of that information. We do take our public records requests very seriously. The fact that former Councilor Huda, got the copy of the contract before in racing down here, I was like, I know I'm forgetting something, and that would be the copy of the contract, was in part because, wanted to make sure we got the response out to you once that contract was finalized. So we do take those public records requests very seriously, although we are quite busy in the legal department and things are taking time to respond to. But I am happy to deliver a copy of the contract. If you would like it, I can easily bring that. That was one of those items that's probably sitting upstairs waiting for me to bring down. So
If-
you're happy to have, I can
If we
happy to
could,
send that.
please,
Yeah.
a copy for each member.
Yep,
Thank
happy
you.
to do that, and I'll make sure that Hawk gets his copy.
Thank you.
And Councilor Huda, former Councilor Huda is correct that the total is 75,000, so I was off by 2 in my memory, but that is the total. So let me just say that it's been a little disappointing, I guess, knowing that my work with the committee in the fall of last year was really intended to try and come up with an RFP process that would try and meet some of the concerns, which is how we wound up splitting the non-attest services from the audit services, which the city advised that that would increase the costs for doing that, because as is understood throughout the industry and municipalities, that if you combine those two services, you receive cost savings to get that done, and it's also helps make sure you meet those deadlines for the GFOA requirements. But there were a number of conversations that we had in this committee about the value of potentially splitting them apart, which the city indicated that it was planning to run the process, but would take the input of the committee. And we were very clear that that was the point, that we do certainly have a difference of opinion with people in this room in terms of how the charter is structured and where the responsibilities fall. And it's a difference of view, and that's what it is. But I think there was certainly an effort in the fall of last year to find a path through those different views to go out and do an RFP for the audit services alone, with the recognition that the non-attest services would stay with Melanson for a variety of reasons that we discussed, and it's not worth getting into here. But there was certainly an effort to cross that difference, and there is a difference, and it's just the way it is, and I can respect that there are different views. Moving forward, what I think is important to keep in mind is that we will be going out for another RFP in August, September, get through the budget, and then get ready to issue another RFP, combining the audit and the non-attest services, as was discussed, as a way to get another bite at this apple in a way that's cost-effective and efficient, both in terms of how the staff works with the firm and just to get a better cost. So we are going to restart this process, which is why it is only a one-year agreement with Melanson. And that is where we're going. And while we did release the proposals that were submitted as part of RFP 2022, we have not released other portions of that file because of the fact that we are going out again for very similar services. So therefore, there's a limit to what we want to share, so that going forward, there's no competitive disadvantage, to or advantage to one form or the other in terms of how the committee might be looking at the relative aspects of each of the firms and what they would bring. So that's the reason why we're kind of walking the line carefully in terms of producing some of the information as part of that RFP that was just completed, but not all of the information that we would typically disclose because of this process that will be kicking off in, August or September to again look at this and see if we can move the process forward. I will also say that I am perfectly comfortable both wearing my management hat and my lawyer hat with the processes that we have in place and took in terms of how we conducted and the RFP process. You don't issue an addendum once you've already opened the proposals or the bids, which is why there was no formal addendum for that piece. So I'm comfortable that we've met both the purchasing requirements as outlined in Chapter 1 of our ordinance book, as well as the purchasing manual. So services are treated a little differently from a construction project that goes out to bid. So I don't want to belabor any points, but looking forward to, continuing to work with this committee and work as we go and proceed with a new RFP, hopefully for a 3-year contract, and move this process forward. I'm really looking forward.
Chair White?
the
Yeah,
next one.
please. Yeah.
I don't get this wrong. Peter Huda, 280 South Street. Always forget. Okay, to respond to some of the comments made by the deputy city manager. First of all, the transparency in the budget process has absolutely nothing to do with the audit. An audit is a outside independent firm coming in and looking at your internal controls and how you process, your accounting department and finance department processes all of their records. So transparency in the budget process and taking all this out to the public is not, it's not related. The next thing I'd like to say is what we did last fall, which culminated in a putting forward of an RFP at the December 16th meeting, was totally discarded. And we went back and forth and discussed the role of the audit committee versus the role of city staff, and the biggest problem there was remained independence. And I guess I can't say this enough, the problem of independence where the city staff is actually signing the contract of the auditor that is auditing them is the biggest problem here. The other thing I'd like to address is the charter and also the audit committee ordinance. Now, the audit committee ordinance specifically states that the city manager is to attend all of these meetings. Unlike other committee charters or ordinances, it does not say or assignee or deputy city manager or anybody else. And the city manager has not attended any. Now, you can say you were put in her place all you want. The first one, she was not available. After that, we just never saw the city manager. And we accepted as an audit committee last year, when I was chair, that you would be, I guess, looking out for the city's best interest in representing the city manager as a city attorney. And we're hoping that the city manager would take her place at the committee. That never happened. So when you look at how the committee is looked at through the ordinance and through the charter, and the specifics that you held the committee to as far as doing the job of putting an RFP forward and then following through with the contract, is really contrary to what it says in the charter, because it's still not independent. And the fact that an assigned person that is written into the ordinance has not attended is a very concerning fact. The other thing that I'd like to say is my expectation as a taxpayer and a resident with this committee would have been that since the contract is signed, and that was the culmination of all of the efforts of this committee, that you would have provided it. And that was very disappointing. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also add one other comment to your comments, if I may, please. And that is that we understood on the audit committee that Melanson's role was important for the finance director. But that doesn't keep one from putting the non-attest services, which we understood was important for Melanson to do. It doesn't keep that from putting that out to bid. And it was only by putting it out to bid, which our RFP had in it, and yours did not, that you would then be able to trust the quotes that were coming in for the non-attest services. As it was, that work was not put out to bid, and it created a tremendous flaw in the process, and that was very unfortunate. So that was our disappointment that we had regarding the city's RFP, that that non-attest service work was not put out to bid. And so the fact that we got the $25,000 quote from Melanson, as I say in my comments, was truly extortionate. Mr. Tabor.
Question for the chairman.
Yep.
I understood you to say that you had a pricing discussion with CLA in the fall about the non-attest services coming in at $10,000 to $12,000,
Yes.
and that was in advance of an RFP process. It would have been a sealed bid, competitive bidding process.
Right.
I just want to say, I stand by my, the way I voted in this, that the process has been flawed. You know, if you watch the December meeting of the Blue Ribbon Committee, former Councilor Kennedy says to you all, the whole reason we created this committee is to change auditors. And that's what you guys need to do. So I've been concerned about that. It seems simpler, and it would have been better government, and hindsight's always 20/20, but if the prior council had simply voted to change auditors, and then in our city manager form of government, the staff would have followed that policy, set up an open bidding process, and allowed as many bidders to come in as possible. But this committee was put in the position of the people who appointed the members wanted a certain outcome, and at the same time we had to run a fair sealed bid process that should have been fair to everybody. I think that was an inherent tension. I don't want to litigate any of the past any more than that. I think we only gave Melanson, the city council voted to only give Melanson a one-year contract so that we could move forward and this committee could contribute value by running a good bid process, getting as many competitive bids as we can, including allowing bidders to bid on both the non-attest and the main audit to get the best value and efficiency. And that'll be good work. I think this committee did good work in how we interviewed and rated the two bidders, and we can repeat that. So I would rather look forward to that, and that was the whole reason the city council did this one-year interim contract. That and frankly concerns that the finance department was short-staffed. And the last thing I would say is, as I know for a fact, that the finance department has said when they're fully staffed, they welcome a new auditor and will look forward to proving the kind of quality of books that we've had and been recognized for all along. Thanks.
Any further comments? I would just add to the looking forward that the future RFPs are issued for a 3-year contract, not a 1-year contract. A 1-year contract favors the established vendor, and the costs of getting up to speed needs to be spread out over 3 years.
And I would say management concurs with that, and that was certainly the intention of the December one, although it wasn't as clear as we would have liked to have been. It's one of the corrections that should be made, is to make it very clear that we're looking for a 3-year.
Any further comments? So, Attorney Woodland, I just want to make sure that that I have the right public meeting minutes that still need to be approved.
Yep, we have a set from February 10 and February 24. And they are attached in the packets. They were circulated. It's the very abbreviated because it was mostly a non-public session, so they're very short. The ones you and I worked on yesterday for the
Right.
February 24th.
So, could I get a motion, please, to approve the February 10 and February 24, public minutes?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to get a motion, please, and the wording is in the agenda, for moving into non-public, please.
I'll move as written on the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Counselor Cook, you second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 July, City Council's meeting July 11th.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll miss that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, why don't, Attorney Whitman, why don't you and I work on the, getting the draft to the committee, and I will set up a meeting sometime mid, so I need that draft by, say, July 15.
Yep.
And with the idea of getting the committee together sometime in the following week.
Yep, Cynthia, I'm sure, would be more than willing to help poll the committee members on availability.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, so we have a motion to adjourn on the floor.
Back to that, yeah.
Right. And so I think we've had our discussion. All in favor of adjourning?
All right.
Aye.
And it is 11:04. Okay, thank you all.